I welcome you yet to another video here on the Kenyan Daily Report. And on the segment, did you know? As of right now, we are looking to a certain allegation that has currently been raised in regards to President William Ruto leasing another very key project of the Republic of Kenya to another Arabian country. And this project is none other than the Galana Kulalu irrigation scheme, where President William Ruto is believed to have leased this project to a country in the UAE. Mostly, according to the speculations that we are receiving, the country that has been given this tender is none other than Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi. Now, in regards to what we're talking about, one man by the name of Morara Kebaso, I bet he is a familiar figure that you all relate with. Morara Kebaso has tweeted something that has caught my attention, and when it comes to us speaking about our natural resources or our asset as a country, once something very fishy is mentioned, we have to take a deep dive into the matter to really verify the details of what is being speculated. Whether it is really rumors and speculation or it is the utmost truth. You know, our President William Ruto, is a man that we have known for several times. He is not scared of taking the risk of leasing our natural resources or key strategic projects which matter to we as a nation to foreigners. Now, according to Morara, he says, we are receiving information that President William Ruto has leased 200,000 acres of Galana Kulalu to Arab investors for 99 years and at Kenya shillings 105 billion. That almost double the size of Seychelles as a country and bigger than Mombasa and Vihiga County combined. We would like to verify this information before we ask members of the public who might know something about this to comment. Now, allow us to diverge into this. Listen, the information that is coming, we are being told, is leasing 200,000 acres of land of Galana Kulalu irrigation scheme. If you don't know about Galana Kulalu, I don't know if you live in our republic, because Galana Kulalu is termed as the biggest irrigation scheme in East and South Africa. The East and the Southern Africa of the continent of Africa, there is no other project which deals with agriculture that is bigger than Galana Kulalu. Now, the Galana Kulalu irrigation scheme contract was terminated in the year 2019 under the reign of President Uhuru Kenyatta after realizing the investors that had come into the said project, most of them were scammers and they were not genuine. And more so, a deal with the Saudi Arabian country, the Saudi Arabia, was terminated under the reign of President Uhuru Kenyatta, because he saw that these people are just using the funds of the people of the Republic of Kenya, but at the end of the day, there is no result, there is no delivering into what we are supposed to receive from the Galana Kulalu irrigation scheme. Now, come back to speaking about Galana Kulalu. I want you to really understand what we mean when we are speaking about Galana Kulalu and how important is Galana Kulalu to the Republic of Kenya as we speak right now. According to the news that we have, this is what has so far been published about Galana Kulalu. The Galana Kulalu project is a 52 million US dollar project by the government of Kenya in partnership with private sector that was aimed at providing food security in Kenya and even in East Africa at large. Now, the National Irrigation Authority is the implementing agency. On completion, the scheme was set to be the biggest in East and Southern Africa and a major milestone for Kenya in attaining food security. The project has faced some challenges in implementation that has delayed its initial timelines. The Galana project stalled in 2019 after the government terminated the contractors. Galana Kulalu project was expected to end the perennial maize shortage in the country by cultivating 200,000 acres of the Galana Kulalu complex to meet 41% of the country's annual maize consumption of 48 million bags in order to caution farmers against an oversupply of maize that could hurt their earnings. Maize at Galana is said to be grown for one season annually. Listen, the Galana Kulalu project was expected to end perennial maize shortage in the country. They were supposed to cultivate 200,000 acres of Galana Kulalu. Now come to the statement published by Morara Kebaso. How many acres have we been informed that they were leased to the Arabian contractors? According to the info we have, Morara tells us that Galana Kulalu irrigation scheme, a portion of the Galana Kulalu, which amounts to 2,000 acres, has been added over to Arab investors for over 105 billion Kenyan shilling. Now, allow me to take you back to the year 2023. Let's get back kiasi so that we will understand how the Galana Kulalu project was drained. Now, according to the Nation, when they campaigned for the general election, Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto, in the year 2012, they promised to put 1 million acres of land under modern irrigation within 5 years in Galana Kulalu. But unfortunately, the Galana Kulalu project turned out to be a spectacular fiasco. We can piece together what went wrong from the various documents on the project now that President William Ruto is keen to pour some more money into it as he promised in the year 2023. Let's get down. We may have learned some kickback and procurement lessons, but perhaps we have not. Parliament was right to question why Galana Kulalu has consumed 14 billion for only 10,000 acres, meaning that every acre consumed 1.4 million and produced only 22 bags of maize. Wewe nikuulize, ukipatiwa shilingi milioni 1.4 utazitumia kuweza kuproduce how many bags of maize? Na maanisha ngunia ngapi za mahindi utakazozilima na pesa takriban milioni 1,400. According to the statistics that we have, when the government questioned the Galana Kulalu irrigation scheme scandal, it was said that they spent 14 billion Kenyan shillings for only 10,000 acres. And of the 10,000 acres, they had only produced a few bags of maize, where according to the allocation of the 14 billion, we see that every acre is allocated 1.4 million and every acre of land, the 14.4 million produces 22 bags of maize. How does that explain itself? Now, going forward, Galana Kulalu was put in place during the tenure of the Cabinet Secretary Felix Koskei. now the head of public service, and was deemed to be the answer to Kenya's perennial shortage of maize and the cost of the staple crop. But with all its promises, it has become our white elephant. The same way Bura irrigation scheme has become the playground for profiteers since the World Bank financed project went south in the 1990s. The Galana Kulalu copied the bad manners of Bura irrigation, which was to irrigate 12,000 acres, but only about 3,000 acres are under use right now. For instance, in 2019, some 1.8 billion was set aside to rehabilitate the Bura irrigation scheme under President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. But the time the contract period ended, only 12% of the work had been completed. When questions were first raised on Galana Kulalu, Mr. Koskei, the current head of public service, called a press conference on August 16, 2014, and announced that an Israel farm would sign a contract to build a 10-acre pilot farm. We told a 10,000 acre pilot farm. We were told that this would reduce Kenyans' reliance on rain-fed agriculture and reduce food prices. We also know that on April 7, 2014, the then National Irrigation Board entered a lease with Agricultural Development Corporation (ADC), which owns the land, to lease 20,000 acres of land at the cost of 480 million. The current National Irrigation Authority has contested the terms of that agreement. It was never made clear why the Irrigation Board was leasing 20,000 acres while it only needed 10,000 acres for the pilot project. Who was to use the 10,000 extra acres? And more importantly, why the government was taking a loan to lease its land. Now, on August 2014, the National Irrigation Board signed a project contract with Green Araba Limited, the Israel farm, and the site was added over on September 11, 2014. Now, this contract was single-sourced, meaning that Kenyans did not carry out competitive bidding or get the best pricing. Nobody has ever explained why we single-sourced this project and whether it was value for money. On the 14.5 billion, the projection was that construction, installation of irrigation infrastructure and testing systems would cost 14.5 billion. During that time, press interview, President Ruto admitted and was correct that Galana Kulalu was a scam. But he was shy to admit that it was poorly procured from inception and that he and Uhuru Kenyatta owe Kenyans some explanation. Actually, the project was one of the first haste of Jubilee's first and second terms and became a campaign issue in 2017. Dr. Ruto defended Galana Kulalu then. Despite the many questions being asked, how did the signature food project that was hoped to bridge our maize shortage become a spectacular failure? We know that the National Irrigation Board took a bank loan of US dollars 71 million, which is equal to 8.8 billion Kenyan shillings, from the Bank of Leumi, Israel, for the 10,000 acre model farm construction. As the Auditor General would later say, the contract signed by NIB was a ripoff and was not in the interest of Kenyan taxpayers. Why did Kenya officials sign a lopsided loan? And what did the Ruto government do? Now, the National Irrigation Board, which was supposed to repay the loan, distanced itself from the negotiation and blamed National Treasury for the shortcomings cited by the Auditor General, Dr. Edward Ouko. According to NIB, National Intelligence Bureau, in response to Dr. Ouko, the Galana Model Farm loan was negotiated by the National Treasury on behalf of the Government of Kenya and not the National Irrigation Board, the NIB. Now, those who signed the loan read Clause 6 of the agreement and agreed that the Israel Bank would determine the loan interest from time to time, so it would keep shifting. The National Irrigation Board was also to pay the bank for any cost incurred while mobilizing the funds for loan disbursement. The worst part was that NIB was not entitled to contest any payment said to have been paid by the Israel Bank to the contractor, and was not supposed to justify its failure to pay its loans as per the contract. That means that Kenya agreed that it would not question any payments made by the bank, which gave the Israel lender a leeway to charge the Kenyan taxpayer as much as possible without any challenge. At first, the National Assembly Committee on Livestock and Agriculture opposed the entry of the Green Arava. But after its team members toured Israel with President Kenyatta, they changed their hearts. We have our reservations as to how the project was designed. Kenyans were not aware of the true picture and the essence of the project. However, the misconceptions have been put to rest, said Mr. Karek Mbioki during the Israel tour. Now, come to the high-profile project. The question that was never answered was why such a high-profile project was producing such low yields. While an acre would produce a yield of 22 bags of 90 kgs, Galana Kulalu in January 2016 produced 6 bags per acre, and in 2015 some 17 bags per acre. By then, General Manager Daniel Baraza, who was later fired and had promised that they intended to harvest 40 bags per acre, instead only one harvest in October 2016 carried out by Green Arava produced that 1 bags per acre. For tenderpreneurs, Galana Kulalu was like a gold mine outside the media scrutiny. It was where millionaires were minted, and social media was awash with strange tales that were not so far from the truth. In 2018, a dispute emerged between Green Arava and National Irrigation Authority when the contractor claimed that the National Irrigation Board owed it 1 billion Kenyan shillings, but the irrigation agency disputed the claim, saying that the contractor was stealing from the government. At the time, that contract was terminated. The contractor had put irrigation systems on 3,300 acres, which the new National Irrigation Authority took over, and that was not the only theft. The Kilifi North Member of Parliament Owen Baya told Parliament in August 2021 that government mandarins are actually subdividing the land and giving it to themselves without the consent of Parliament as required by the law. Parliament was told that 300,000 acres had already been grabbed from ADC, from Galana Kulalu. These are the allocations that President Ruto has quashed as Galana Kulalu became a grabber's paradise. Right now, people are subdividing the ADC Galana Kulalu. We lost the ADC Sabaki in Malindi the same way. It was given to around 2,000 people, but the indigenous missed, said Baya. And the dam being built and the stealing gap sealed, this project would have met our maize deficit of 20 million bags by cultivating 250,000 acres of the Galana Kulalu. Now, the other half was to come under irrigation once the High Grad Falls Dam, some 200 kilometers away, was built. We are once again back to Galana Kulalu as William Ruto tries to say that he is rescuing the project by leasing it to Arabs. And I dare say that the country that was mostly leasing the Galana Kulalu is not only the country that we have been told, they said Saudi Arabia only. We might have Qatar over there. Now, according to an article in 2014, Africa Hub for Grabs, Saudi Arabia takes its share in Africa. Well, this is one of the reasons that I'm telling you Saudi Arabia is into this saga. According to this article, November 17th, 2014, it says, land grabbing threatens the livelihood of many communities in Africa. Saudi Arabian companies are among the many grabbing land in Africa. Under the umbrella of the King Abdullah Initiative for Saudi Arabia Investment Abroad, Saudi investors have acquired land in Africa with promises to improve Africa's agriculture sector. Saudi investors have leased a combined 1 million hectares of land in Morocco, Ethiopia, Mali, Mauritania, Sudan, South Sudan, and Senegal. Now, when you look at these, was published in 2014. As of right now, the Saudi investors have gone an extra mile. It is believed that as of right now, they have acquired over 2 million hectares of land in Africa. And now Kenya falls under the umbrella of the countries that have leased their land to Saudi Arabia. Now, this resulted in the displacement of local population, mostly in western Ethiopia. Saudi Star Agriculture Development, owned by Saudi Ethiopian billionaire Mohammed Al Mahmoud, is one of the perpetrators. Now, leaving the Saudi saga outside, back to us. How do you sign a contract? The question that I ask. How do we sign a contract where we are leasing a very key strategic development infrastructure in our country, which is meant to bridge the gap of the Kenyan food production? You know, when Ruto took over, I remember him speaking about Galana Kulalu. Several times he spoke about how, it was even in a media interview on the State of the Nation address. The president told us that Galana Kulalu was a scam, but he, under his administration, was working into restoring Galana Kulalu. Now the question is, how far have they restored Galana Kulalu? Or should I ask, is this the way of restoring Galana Kulalu by leasing it to foreign investors? Now back to the controversies that surrounded Galana Kulalu. The Galana Kulalu project was made with controversy bordering on misappropriation of funds. According to Karedi Amos, he cited how local investors, Saudi prince, made peace in Galana Kulalu deal. Also, how misappropriation of state funds on the rise in 2014, how the Auditor General warned the country on how money was being lost in the Galana Kulalu irrigation scheme. Was Galana Kulalu project designed to fail? And if so, right now we are speaking about a land grabbing saga. Remember, MP Baya told us that the land was being divided among powerful individuals in government. That was back in the year 2021 when the campaigns were going on. Then our current president was the deputy president of the Republic of Kenya. And as the saying goes, where land is, Ruto is. So how many acres of land did Ruto acquire from the Galana Kulalu? And the question also remains, and we ask right now, in the 300,000 acres of land that was said to have been subdivided among the powerful individuals in government under the Galana Kulalu irrigation scheme, could have Ruto acquired 200,000 acres from the Galana Kulalu? Remember, the land that was set aside when Ruto and Uhuru Kenyatta took over was 1 million acres of land, which was meant to be put under irrigation, and it would bridge. I mean, the Galana Kulalu irrigation scheme, if that project was to be successful, if that project was to, if there was no stealing and misappropriation of funds, that project that project only would have pushed Kenya that years in front. And let me tell you, another project like the Konza City, if President Mwai Kibaki had time to complete the Konza City, The Konza city, now I'm putting it in the mind of if this project had been completed, the Galana Kulalu and the Konza city. I ask you, where this country would be in terms of development and infrastructure. Tungekuwa mbali sana. Uhuru Kenyatta was unable to deal with cartels in the Galana Kulalu irrigation scheme because the cartel that he was dealing with were those that were in government and were fighting him. That's why you heard him at a certain point telling us that 2 billion is lost every day in this government. Wadau, mambo ni kama hayo. Tunakamilisha. Na je, swali linalosalia ni kweli Rais William Ruto amepatiana Galana Kulalu irrigation scheme kwa Waarabu kwa mara nyingine, mkataba ambao Rais mstaafu Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta aliweza kuusitisha? Swali la balagha hilo. Tuungane katika video zetu zijazo. Usisahau kusubscribe ndani ya